Welcome, Nadia Murdock, to the Dish with Dina podcast. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
I have to go back in time and thank our dear friend, our mutual acquaintance and colleague, Katie Bresak, for putting us in touch with each other. I always like to start with, how do we know each other? But we kind of picked up where she left off, and we've been engaging in some virtual conversations. So I'm so excited when you said that you would be interested in having me interview you.
I love that too, because I was like, when did she introduce us? And it's been like years. I think even like pre-pandemic.
I
And
was gonna
then
say, I was gonna say, there definitely were some things that happened along the way that threw me off, and then I thought, and then, that 3-year period between 2020
yeah,
and at the time of this recording is just a giant blur. I feel like
yeah.
and you might feel the same way. I definitely feel like I'm making up for a lot of lost time in
Mhm.
things that I was hoping to do, hoping to accomplish, juggling a few things, managing physical and mental health, and so many things just kind of had to be put on the back burner. But the front burner is open now, my friends. I'm happy to say. So, Nadia, I want to ask first about your mission and purpose. Let's start talking a little bit about that, and then we'll get more into details as far as the topic of our conversation today, which has to do with some mind body discussions and also
Yeah.
developing confidence and maybe even resilience in some things. Where does it all start for you? How did you find your way into the wellness world?
Oh, yes. Okay. So it started in college. I grew up, first, I'll give you some background. My mom's a nurse, a retired nurse. So I always grew up with wellness being top of mind in our home, prioritizing your health because it's so important. So then when I went away to college, didn't really love freshman year. I was homesick. There wasn't a lot of diversity. I didn't find the classes challenging. So I turned to food. And so since my home was kind of strict in terms of what we could eat and all that other, I had everything at my fingertips. So I was like snacking on Taco Bell between classes, like not as a meal, but as a snack. And then I remember one time looking in the mirror and not even recognizing myself, like soul and body, like, right? Like my spirit, my energy, all of that. And so then I worked really hard and I studied my ass off. Oh, sorry. And I transferred. I got a 4.0 GPA and I transferred and I was like, I'm out of here. And then still struggled with having a good relationship on what is proper, quote unquote, to eat because I was like immersed into diet culture and really comparing myself to body types that didn't look like mine. So there was so much behind that, like genetically, culturally, everything, and just not really having a good scope of that at the time. So the relationship with like fad diets, and I always share this, I did the onion soup diet. I was the most miserable person ever because the diet was like onion soup for breakfast, onion soup for lunch, and a light salad for dinner. I stunk up our dorm. Everyone's like, ew, what is that? But like, yeah, it's a journey. And so that led me to my senior year of college. My brother gifted me a 1-year membership to a gym. And that's where my love for fitness happened. What got me in the doors of wellness is not what kept me there. What got me there was comparison and trying to fit a mold that wasn't for me. But what kept me there was the strength that I built inside and out and the confidence that started to bloom and the community and the connection that I made and the difference I was making in other people's lives. I wasn't an instructor yet, but I was influencing others and they would come to me and ask me questions. And that sparked my passion, right? Like, I think I'm meant to do this. But it took me a while before I actually launched Nadia Murdock Fit.
It's a journey, and it always is a journey. And I've had this discussion too, as I think I've mentioned before with you, but also my listeners know that I also teach. I'm an adjunct lecturer. I'm a mentor to those coming up the ranks in the profession of dietetics. And we often say there is a difference between having a job and having a career, right? Something
Yeah.
that you are invested in, putting the time and effort into, but also getting that feedback of just living and leading by example. So, not every person that is qualified or credentialed to do something might have a lived experience doing that particular thing. Like I've often said, I don't have diabetes, but I'm able to help people manage diabetes. But when you do have some experience in something and you're willing to be the, vulnerable, transparent self that you are, it really resonates, and it's almost like people find you because of the message that you're putting out there. So I I'm sorry that you had to go through some things that made you feel a little bit less than, but also how it ventured off into this new direction now and allowed you to become who you are. Will you give us a little bit of insight into your credentials and your experience in what you're doing now?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So I think that I went into college thinking I wanted to be a lawyer. And I was like, this isn't for me. And then what I ended up graduating with is a BA in psychology. And I think it's my love for helping people. Even as a kid, I was always helping people like get their first job, help them with their first boyfriend. And I loved it. And it wasn't, like as I grew, I knew that there's boundaries when it comes to that, but like that innate feeling of helping. And when I look at my background, and my mom is that way, she's a nurse from Jamaica. She would come here, help other young nurses. It's just really like part of my DNA. And then so in 2020, I also got certified in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And that also helped me so as my company evolved, so did I, right? So I'm a reflection of what I do and what my company is. And so I had a high risk pregnancy in 2020, just before lockdown. And I was like, I need to be my own advocate right now. And so I sought out all these mindfulness techniques because everything was closed, right? Everything. So then I started tapping into the reframing of your mindset, reframing your thoughts. And I was like, I need to share this. And so I got certified in CBT and added that to my expertise, and it's been really glorious. And it's funny too, Dina, because I feel like I've always been doing that, but like, the certification just helped to polish it and heighten what I can offer to others.
Yeah, it seals the deal. And you mentioned too about even having the degree in psychology. There is so much that goes around the behaviors and the habits of what people do, what influences they have, what triggers them, the lived experiences, the past trauma, that in my field of nutrition, it's never about the food. It's always
Mhm.
about the upbringing or how the relationship was at the dinner table or
Mhm.
whatever language was used as well. We've had lots of
Mhm.
conversations around that too. So when you use the term mindset,
Mhm.
I often think too of the stages of change, like when people are pre-contemplating making a change in their life, not yet ready to go into action. How do you know where to meet people where they're at and get them from not feeling confident or not having the mindset just yet to where they need to be in order to see themselves succeed in whatever goals that they have?
Great question. And that was trial and error on my part, right? Because I can see in prospective clients what they can be, and current clients too. But if they can't see it yet, you can't force it. And that becomes a push and shove situation. And then there's no change at all. So for new clients coming in, there's qualifying questions that I usually ask to see where they are, right? Maybe the ideas kind of sparked, but they're not really ready to make that commitment, because a lot of what goes into this is commitment, consistency, and vulnerability. And I can't help you if you're not able to be vulnerable with me, right? If we keep it super surface, like, give me a workout plan, give me a diet, like, oh, I didn't do it. I'm like, well, there's more. Like you said, it's not about the food, and it's not about the exercise. It's about what's that roadblock? What is that mindset block that is preventing you from showing up for yourselves? And once that's why the coaching I do is at least 6 months, because it's like dating, right? Like, and little by little, the more comfortable they get with me, the more comes out. And the more that comes out, the more I can help them. So, to answer your question, there are pre qualifying questions I ask. And some people are ready to go. They know they need it. They've been struggling with this for years. And maybe they've met me at a conference or something. And there's something in my speech or in my delivery that sparks something. But there's always that pre-qualification because it's we're at a standstill if you're not ready.
So
Yeah.
the thing that you first mentioned also when you and I were talking preliminarily is that mind body connection, that even if somebody thinks, "Yeah, I've had enough, I'm done, I'm ready to move forward," there are still kind of like ingrained feelings that can come either from past traumas or just triggers and responses to
Mhm.
certain things. So tell us a little bit too about your thoughts on the mind body connection. Even though your brain might be saying yes, your body, your heart, whatever emotions are going through can be stopping you from progressing into that. It can betray you sometimes as well.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the mind body connection.
So as I said in the beginning, like what got me into fitness was, not what kept me there. And I started to make observations about people in the community that I looked up to, like in terms of their fitness level, their physique. And some of the strongest fit appearing people were so destroyed mentally. And it fascinated me. I'm like, how are you not confident? You're so strong. You're leading these classes. And so then it had me dig a little deeper between mind body connection. And I started to even reflect on my own self, and you can feel good in your body, but if you're not good here and you're not being honest, once again, that vulnerability, that self-awareness, that self accountability, like, why am I not good? And I think that that is so essential, Dina, for any self-sabotage we talked about a little bit earlier. You have to be honest with yourself, and you can't be honest with yourself and achieve your goals at the same time, right? If you're lying to yourself, the goals you tell yourself these narratives that will never be for me. I can't attain that. That's because you're packing away that ugly thing in the box and you don't want to open it up. I mean, real talk, it hurts. Sometimes we don't know what that is. And you may not even know what that is because, I had a therapist once tell me that sometimes like there's a style of therapy called EMDR, and it opens up past traumas that the human body and mind is so fascinating, literally protecting you, right? And so when you do these styles of therapy, it starts to open up, peel back that onion, and that stuff starts to come to the surface. But if you're not strong in your mindset before doing that, it could be really destructive. So I say all this to say, like, as hard as you work on your physical health, your wellness, your nutrition, you should be putting that same amount of effort into your mental health, because you can be so strong from the exterior, but if inside and in your heart and your soul, you're not there, it will never match up, and then you'll never reach your absolute ultimate success or, goals.
Yeah, and that's where it comes into play of being able to sustain something long term and not being on these fluctuating,
Correct.
let me try this thing, let me try this next, let me try an onion soup diet, let me try something else. It's all about what is it that I really need to do on the very base level to allow me
Yeah.
to strengthen my skills. And like you said too, the honesty thing, which is funny because in a weird way, sometimes I feel like our our body and our mind pay attention to the things that we say, right? So yes, there's some vulnerability there, but I also know that if I tell myself I can do it even though I don't think I can, my
Mhm.
body will meet me there. It'll say I do believe I can do it, because the other option is to say that I suck at something and I'll never be able to achieve it, and my body will believe that too. So I think it's maybe a bit of a fine line that people play with, like allowing you to act as if, or maybe trying to get past some boundaries or burdens, because if we end up beating ourselves up all the time, incessantly, then what is the end goal there? Like, we're always going to be saying, I feel bad, I feel guilty, I'm not good enough, versus I did really great, I did my best, I tried, I'll do better tomorrow. Like, your brain and body are listening to those messages that you're sending. That and so I guess my next question is, since you may have a variety of people that you do work with, are there certain traits or certain common characteristics that you do tend to see most often when you're working with somebody? So that if you were to target, top 3 suggestions, recommendations on how to overcome a mindset, or how to put place a mindset and overcome some negative self-talk.
And I like that question because it also I feel like there's a piece of me in each person I serve. right? So like wherever they are in their journey, I've either been there or I'm in it. So I can always speak to it. And I feel like that always creates a stronger connection with me and my clients. But the number one thing that I do see is like playing it small, and it kind of lends to what you were saying before about telling yourself you can't do something and then you end up doing it. I think that's the part of you that knows you can do it, but like there's a fear or there's something in the past where there's someone else you might be comparing yourself to. Heck yeah, you can do it. But you have to ask yourself, why are you telling yourself you can't do it? Because just like you said, your body's listening, your mind is listening. And if you really couldn't do it, then you wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? So like I feel like when you get really granular about it, like there's so much that can go into your success that sometimes we overthink, and it's really the powers within us and all the things that go into our successes within us. And that's what I notice a lot in my clients. They don't realize the amount of power that they have. They're either relying on something else, or it's not enough money or not enough time, or I don't know the right people, or I don't live in the right place, but it's all possible. And I think that is the most common thing I see in all of them.
And this brings me back to what you mentioned before about that 6-month program commitment, because, and this has come up in so many other episodes on so many various discussions, that we I don't want to generalize like as a society, but there's this thing about instant gratification and, doing these really extreme approaches to things of seeing something and an effect that's right away, but not realizing that, just like you said, with trial and error, sometimes people just don't have the patience with themselves, or are maybe afraid to commit to long-term approaches to things because they don't know if they can do it. They might have other things going on in their lives that potentially could interrupt that. They might not have a good support system at home as well.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about the how commitment and confidence maybe go hand in hand, right? Let's maybe try to
Mhm.
define some of these terms if you don't mind. Where
Yeah.
do you see that pairing up? Like what chicken comes before the egg in that sense? Or are they paired up together that as one gets stronger, the other will too?
I love these questions, Dina. But I would like to say before I answer that part of the question is belief is important, right? The belief that you can attain this goal, the belief that you should invest in yourself, that it's possible. I think that is so important. And when they don't have that belief, then they're already downplaying it. Oh no, 6 months is too long. You're already talking yourself out of it because you don't believe that you can attain what you've dreamed of having. In terms of commitment and confidence, it first starts with consistency. So I've seen a lot. And then there's one client I worked with for a year because she was ready. Let's go. Actually, she was a little apprehensive when we started. And then after the first session, she's like, okay, I want to do this. She was all in. She always did her homework. She always showed up. But that belief was lagging, right? And so was the consistency. So then after the call, 2 days after, all in it, all in it, and then it would waver, right? So this is why I say this takes time. You are unlearning behaviors that you've probably had all your life, right? This is stuff, whether it's from your friends, your family, something that happened in school, this belief about yourself that you've convinced yourself to be the truth, this is unlearning that. And so I don't think people really understand that it's not a quick fix. And when they look at it that way, that's when that belief starts to waver, as the word you used before, because it's like, well, it's not working. I'm done. Right. And it's not like that. Like anything else, it takes time. So to answer your question, consistency is key. With consistency comes confidence, because then you're like, oh, snap, I did that, or, oh, I do look good today, or, oh, I showed up for myself today, or, I have that same client I was talking about. Now she sends me pictures. Like right now she's on like a maintenance program. So we only meet like 4 times a year. But in the middle, she'll send me random pictures of her high-fiving herself in the mirror. And this is a woman that could never really look at herself in the mirror. And now she's smiling and looking at herself and high-fiving herself. That took consistency because that was not happening in the first 6 months. But now it's part of her. And so I think that's important to know.
And you mentioned we've talked a lot about consistency is key. It comes up in a lot of discussions on this program and also in my own client sessions too. And that looks different for everybody. And I try to encourage people to not think of it as a linear progression. Like I do not see it as just this constant incline or decline to wherever you're going. It can be really wonky looking, but the
Yes.
point is that as you're being more consistent with things, and you're probably going to agree with me on this, is you're collecting feedback too, right? Whether it's a reward of something that you accomplished in success or an opportunity to learn a challenge that appeared and how you were able to overcome it, you're collecting information of saying, okay, now I can prepare myself, I can equip myself with what knowledge I need, whatever
Mhm.
tools and strategies I need in order to overcome that and continue to be consistent at something. And I think I also want to address too, Nadia, how you might, if somebody should fall off something, like I try to, I try to say I want people to feel flexible and free, that
Mm,
nothing's ever going to be perfect or
right,
exact, but I try to say try not to let like 2 days in a row go, of course,
right.
unless you're dealing with like an injury or an illness, but even then there's probably still something that you could be doing in self-care world, or something that you can be paying attention to as far as feeding yourself and nourishing yourself while these things are going. So do you have any guidance if somebody is falling off track or does fall off of whatever, consistency that they were originally planning to do, of how to get back on it?
Yeah. I always like, especially the new clients, I fall off the wagon and these terminologies, and I'm like, oh, don't say that, right? Like you just said, life happens. If your kid is sick or work starts to pick up, it's life, And I think the most important thing that I always to help combat that feeling is remember your accomplishments, right? Did you wake up? Did you drink water? Did you hit the gym? Did you journal? Did you meditate? Like, don't ignore what you did. A lot of people as a whole, whether it's my clients or society, we focus on what we didn't do versus what we did do. We focus on what we don't have versus what we do have. And when you flip it, reframe it, it looks so much brighter. Like, oh, this is life. Be kind to yourself, because if you're not, that starts with that negative internal dialogue. And then you're going to be like, screw it, give me the pint of ice cream, or forget it, I'm not going to the gym for a week, and then it becomes that hamster wheel of always starting over again. So I do think back again to the honesty and self-awareness is key, because sometimes people are not being honest with themselves. There's a difference between life getting in the way and you self-sabotaging. And so it's important for you to constantly have those honest conversations with yourself to know when you're doing one or the other, right? And then if you are self-sabotaging, why am I feeling this way? Am I feeling scared? Am I resorting to old habits? And like, we should always be talking to ourselves and getting to know ourselves. And if you can't remember, write it down, because you have to hold yourself accountable. I'm only the guide, you're writing the story. And so I think that's one of the biggest feedbacks I get.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I am a huge advocate of writing things down too, even in a digital age, right? If you're
Yes.
writing it down on your what a computer, or your hand writing something down. And the remembering the accomplishments is big too. This year in my planner. So I use my planner just for like I put stickers on it and I kind of look at a couple of things, but I usually use
Uh,
a lot of digital tools. But in
yeah.
my planner, I make a point at the end of every week to go through and write down the good stuff that happened. Like I had a great day at the beach, or today was really nice when I went for a walk, or like you said, I high five myself for whatever it was. I had a really great conversation, because it is so much easier for a lot of us to focus on the things that we didn't do or forgot to accomplish or felt trapped in, or whatever challenge happened. And so that's been something that I've been like physically documenting in that planner, that I can see at a glance. There have been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've gotten to like every single day. There's been something that I've written on there. And I think that that speaks to maybe it could be generational, it could be cultural. A lot of I did not grow up in a family that did give high fives a lot for
Yeah.
things. They were very apt to say what they were disappointed in. And of course, we didn't have the language to say, hey, that hurts. Like, we want
Right.
you to be
Right.
proud of us for these things. So I always felt like I was trying to strive for something that was just unattainable. And
Mhm.
that's something that I think is, and part of the coaching world too, is that we have to help people see through that. Like we can shine a light on things, but they have to be honest with themselves and with us as well
Mhm.
to say, let's see if we can break that down. This is I always say these are uncomfortable but necessary conversations to have if you want to continue moving forward. So Nadia, before I go into some of my other questions about like how you might lead and live by example, I have a question because I like talking about maybe hot topics and controversial things. Is there anything in your field right now or anything that comes up in conversations with your clients that you feel like you've been debunking or having to, give proper information to help people get through? Like, no, 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 that's not true. This is really what we're doing. Cause I know in dietetics, I mean, pick a day, there's always something going on that somebody's like, is this give cancer, is it true I can't eat potatoes? And I mean, there's always something, but I don't know if in your world, if things like that happen, that you seem like you're coming across quite often.
It's I would say in general, nothing like hot topic right now, but I think like approach, right? Like I said earlier, it's like dating. And I'm looking at some mindset coaches and it's like that tough love and the screaming in your face. And when I was teaching classes in studio, I never gravitated to those fitness classes. And I felt like when women came to my classes, it was just almost like rehab from those type of classes. So it's like find something that works for you, right? Don't do what's trending. Don't go to the coach that everyone else is going to. Literally date around, poke around, find what fits for you. And just because one didn't work doesn't mean they all don't work. And I think that's something that I come up against a lot. Like I've done a lot of coaching, but was it the right fit for you? What stage in your life were you in when you did that type of coaching? And I think that people need to look at mental health and mindset very differently. I think some people even think it's a trend. I think that's one of the things that I come across a lot, actually. Um, and some people think it's a trend that will pass, which is crazy to me. And that's not what I want, which is one of the reasons why I love what I do and I preach what I preach, because this is real. And people that have been suffering in silence are now having opportunities and finding resources that are also accessible. And so I think that's the biggest thing. This is not a trend. This is a way of life. And find the therapist or coach that works best for you until you find the right one.
That alignment is huge. I'm not a fan of that boot camp mentality. I don't like it in, I was going to say leadership, but true leaders don't act like that. I'm talking about like managers at a
Yes.
job, parenting with the
Yep.
hard edge. I am not a fan. I immediately, that's where you turn me off and I'm like, bye. I
Yep.
don't, and I'm not saying that we need to be coddled, but there's definitely an approach that you can take that's softer, that's more
Mhm.
gentle, that is supportive. And
Yes.
when I mentor some of the students that are also going out there to different rotations, they will come back and say, like, you've put me in a very nurturing environment, because I treat them
Mhm.
like they're my, which they are, they're my future colleagues. So
Mhm.
I don't want to give them tough love just because maybe that's how somebody else treated me. And that's where, we can have a whole conversation of the cycle of abuse. But
Yes.
that's something too where it's got to be a good fit. So if you enjoy being yelled at because you're not doing 20 push-ups, then okay, to each their own.
Right.
But I do agree with you that it does not have to be like that. You don't have to get yelled at for things. You don't have to have that boot camp mentality. All right,
Really
so
quick, you said
yes.
something about cycle of abuse and like
Mm,
one of the reasons why I do what I do is that, and specifically for women, is because I feel like when I did work corporate, um, a lot of women didn't show up for me in the way that I hoped, and sometimes even threw me under the bus. And I always knew that when I was a manager or a business, I didn't know what it was going to be, but when I was at a higher level, I would never treat other women or people that way. And I've held true to that, and it feels really fabulous. Like when people come back to me like your words, you're so kind, even to my VA, like she's like, I've never worked for anyone like this. And it's like, why do you have to treat people poorly to get what you want? That is such a, you know, Dina, it's so funny. Like compassion is, I guess, because I grew up with it, but when you go out, it is so rare. It is gratitude and compassion. It is so rare. And that's another thing that I highlight in my coaching is just being grateful. being grateful that you can buy groceries, or being grateful that there's so many little things that we take for granted, and it really helps to change your perspective and how you speak to yourself and what you have access to and what you can do. And I think, yeah, that just got me on a tangent, because I remember being like 20 something and be like, I trusted her. I told her everything, and I'll never forget it. But yeah.
I go on those tangents too, Nadia, because I've said before, I don't understand why we can't. I mean, listen, the world would be a better place in general if we could all lead with love.
Yeah.
Like, what's the problem? But
Right.
you mentioned why can't we? And I think it's because there's insecurity, there's fear,
Yes.
there's lack of confidence too, right? I
Yes.
I don't earn respect, I demand it, and that's not a
Right.
way to be in life. So I think that comes from somebody needs some hugs to like
Yes.
undo some damage there. And I often think to myself, if you remember the movie Men in Black where they zap people's brains to like forget everything, like forget I was
Yeah.
here, zap. I wish there was a way I could kind of go around and do that to certain people who are acting up. And I could say, instead, let me replace what your current characteristics are with something much more softer. I'm sure we will all get along. Read the books that I read. Let's all be on,
Right.
literally be on the same page. So, but as we start doing the snowball effect, hopefully, right? You're
Yeah.
affecting someone, they're seeing things through a different lens. They're
Right.
now getting compassion and receiving that. And maybe you've now stopped whatever is progressing in their next generation because now
Yes.
the person that they're working with or is a part of their family is seeing a different side of them. So I really do hope, we have these like external or concentric circles that are outwardly getting influenced because of people like us. I hope, Nadia.
I think so. I think so.
So, what is a current week in the life of you, or a typical week in the life of you, if there is a typical one? What are things that
Oh,
you are doing, but also how are you managing your own self care, your own mindset?
ooh, it's a heavy one. Okay, so I've gotten much better in the past year and a half doing this. I'm a mom of two young boys, 3 and 6. I run my business. I work from home, and so I went through burnout. Like honestly, about 2 years ago, my youngest is 3, and so I felt like just when I got it down pack with my eldest, and that we added new ones to the mix, that feeling of having to do everything and do everything great. Um, Again, I think that's a learned behavior because my mom is a very strong female, and I never really remember ever hearing my mom ask for help. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I wonder if mom was struggling secretly. So yeah, so that burnout experience, my nutrition, like my adrenals were zapped, like learned so much, Dina. I learned so much. Like, and I encourage people to know that never stop learning. There's always something you can learn from any given day. And that has just propelled me as a person. That low. Yeah. So I say all that to say I've learned to know that no day is the same. I've learned to kind of space out my work, like segment my work. Certain days are for Nadia Murdock Fit, certain days are for me. Whether it's taking a personal call or whether it's, I don't know, getting a manicure. Just knowing that if I'm practicing what I preach, basically. So no week is the same. Tuesday and Thursdays are usually my day to do what I want to do. And a lot of my days are filled with just learning and helping others. I love to give back. Um, I'm excited about traveling more soon and stop putting stuff off. And I don't know if I answered your question. And I love spending time in Whole Foods. Like I told my brother, I was like, I could literally live here. Like if they had like rooms and I just come out and get a juice and go back into, I freaking love that place. Like, cause I'm learning. Did
Okay,
I
you
just
should
come up with
pitch. You
did
should
I just come
pitch
up with
a
something?
Whole Foods hotel. Yes, you should pitch that. Right? Isn't there going to be
Nobody
like a
take our
Netflix
idea.
cafe or something coming soon? You should probably
I
exactly
love it.
put together a business plan.
Because I'm not just grabbing stuff, I'm like reading stuff. I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, this is good for this. Like, because I'm all about health and wellness. So Yeah, no
You
week is the same.
You absolutely answered my question. And I think that's something that speaks to boundary setting as well, with boundaries with ourselves and with others
Yeah,
too, that, this is my time, or if something does get messed up, that I'm trying to like catch back up with something and allowing myself to still have the time for myself, because you can't pour from an empty vessel, as we
no,
like to say. And that's really important. And especially juggling your own business and the family. I mean,
yeah,
listen, everybody's busy, right? We all got stuff going on. And if we're not busy, we'll try to find ways to be busy sometimes.
right.
And at the time of this recording, it's the end of the year. So either people are doing holiday things, or as I'm doing, there's a time of reflection that's happening of what worked, what
Mm,
didn't work. How
mhm,
can I reassess certain things? What am I tweaking? Allowing that to, like, listen, time's a ticking on some things in life for me. So I might have to start saying that's not going to be a priority anymore. I'm gonna have to move that out and just be like, I tried it, it didn't work. I'm onto something else. Or focus my attention to really hone in on something that I definitely want to prioritize. And then other things will have to fall away so that I can leave some space there. So I absolutely love what you were saying just now. And I'm glad that you do that. It's helpful to practice what we preach when we're in the
yes,
wellness world.
yes. I
So
love how you said, sorry, Dina. I
yeah,
love how you said reflection at the end of the year. And I just want to give this quick tip that I've been sharing like
please.
crazy. Doing an audit. So, like doing an audit on the people in your life. And so I've just given this task to two clients last week. Like, look at the people in your life and how are they measuring up? Do they serve you? Are you still keeping them in your life because of obligation or because you feel guilty? And obviously if it's certain family members, you can't exile them, but I like to say you change the tier of how close they are to you, right? And so the people closest to you should be the people that lift you up. And then you drop other people down a tier and maybe they wilt off over time. But I think that audit, nobody really does that. And I remember one time I did that and I just started going through my phone. I was like, I don't talk to you anymore. I don't talk to you anymore. And it feels good because, like you said, writing, the physical action of writing is therapeutic, the same as the physical action of removing people from your phone or whatever, because that opens up a gateway of like, well, I don't really like doing this. I don't like saying it. And then the boundaries come into play, right? Stop saying yes to stuff you don't want to do. Like you are your own boss. So stop doing things you don't want to do because it's your life. So I love that.
It absolutely is. I love the audit. I put it into play very frequently throughout my life. And that
Yeah.
works both in person and the virtual space too. Unfollow
Yes.
people who don't
Yes.
bring you joy. Uh,
Yeah.
Unsubscribe from newsletters that you can't stand seeing anymore, that you don't get to, and
100%.
then it just begins getting cluttered in your emails. It's a
Right.
good time to kind of do a quick little decluttering at really any time in the year.
Yeah.
Nadia, I cannot believe how much we've gotten through as far as this episode, this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour and a half. But
Same.
my first question is going to be, is there anything that we didn't touch upon that you would like to share, that, whatever words of wisdoms, think that might not have come up organically in our conversation before we start wrapping up?
Ooh, that's a good one. A couple words of wisdom that I tell myself and I tell worrying leads to unhappiness, right? Uncertainty can be scary, but you can only deal with what you know, and that's the present. So try to be as present as possible. Don't allow anyone to steal your joy. If you're spending time with someone and when you leave that room or you leave that phone call and you feel depleted and you need to take a nap or uh-uh. Pay attention to how you feel, and that includes the company you keep. And then the last one I would say is just know that it's possible. If you believe in yourself, it's possible. And it's not a quick fix, but it's a commitment you make to yourself.
And it's so rewarding. And if anybody who's listening to this right now says to themselves, yeah, but, or sounds good in theory, but I'm
But
telling you right now, reach out to people like Nadia who can help you go through and chip away, or sign up for a therapy session if you need a little bit more of undoing of things that can potentially be holding you back from your best self. We're not all perfect. Everybody's got their things going on, right? We're human, but
Yep.
it really feels so much lighter when you start navigating a world that you are in control of versus
Hmm.
sacrificing yourself for other people's comfort, as
Mhm.
we tend to say a lot
Mhm.
too. And my final two questions are my related questions that at this point I'm thinking probably everybody knows what's coming. So what is on your plate today, Nadia? When we're done with our conversation, what is the next thing that you're doing or working on? And then what's the next meal that you're having?
Ooh, I like it. So the next thing I'm working on is I have a coaching call with a client. And then after that, I have to pick up my littles from school. And the next thing on my plate, I actually so, Dina, when you have a family that has all these different taste buds, like I'm trying not to cook 1,000 different meals, but I'm leaning towards Dr. Prager's. I'm really hoping you approve of veggie burger with sweet potato and mixed greens.
I approve of anything that brings you joy and nourishes you. I love that. That's a really
Okay,
great
good.
combination of good flavors and good amount of nutrition in there too. That's fantastic. I love
Okay.
that. Well, Nadia, it's been a real pleasure getting to know a little bit more about you, having you share your experience, your knowledge. I really hope that people feel a lot more confident in coming away, or at least have some sort of next step strategy when they listen to this episode. And I will be sharing all of your contact information, your website, your Instagram handle, everything like that in the show notes here. And until next time, my friend, have a great one.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.